I have with me here Heather Andrew, who's the director of Neuro-Insight. Now, we're talking about brains, not something I know an awful lot about because I've been disposed of that a long time ago. However, Heather, you're speaking at 1:20 this afternoon, and what are you talking about?
Talking about where neuroscience can add a new level of understanding by looking at what the brain looking at the brain's response to communication, and trying to look at where neuroscience can add something different and better than what conventional market research can do. Because it's very much complementary, but neuroscience isn't the answer to everything, but there's certain areas, subconscious responses, emotional responses, whereby looking at the brain response, you get a much clearer picture of what's going on than you do by asking people questions.
Okay, so let's take a simpleton, say me. What does that mean as a marketeer? How would I use what you're researching for my brand or my client brands?
You can understand what's really happening in terms of your brand communication. So you put your brand forward and people might respond to it. But is it the colour? Is it the shape of the logo? Is it the product? Is it the sound you associate with your brand? And we can sort of deconstruct what it is the brain's responding to, either in a moving commercial and respond to the brand itself, and identify how you can take those elements of the brand that's strongest and use them as triggers along the sort of path to purchase.
And so if you were to take a brand like Coca-Cola, for example, very distinguished brand, would it mean if we were to change the colour of Coke, it would have an impact?
Have a huge impact, yeah, inevitably. If you change the shape of the Coke bottle, it would have an impact. Very often it's not the logo in its entirety that people are responding to. It's a shape or it's a bit of colour. As I say, a sound can have a really big impact. So if you deconstruct that, you find that it's not necessarily the whole thing that's working, it's bits of it. So if you change the colour, yes, it would be a massive impact, as I think.
And if you take a brand like Gap, so famously, very recently changed their brand and huge uproar, are there learnings from that kind of work you're doing with brands? So if you're going to change a brand, these are the things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely, and we could have tested that in advance. I mean, what we look at is a measure we call brand congruence. It does something fit with your brand. So you could look at the new logo in the branding context and say, is the brand consonant or dissonant with this new logo? And that's exactly the sort of work we do.
So if Gap had come to you first, you would have kept them out of the press for the right reasons?
Well, I'd like to think so.
Good. All right. So you're on at 1:20. Fascinating stuff. Really interesting in terms of how it applies to us in the marketing and advertising world. Just in terms of teasing people in, what top-level tips for this sort of thing? How does a brand start with this sort of thing?
I think without preconceptions, be open to it as a new technique. It's not going to replace what you do now, it's absolutely going to complement it. But it's a way of getting to the stuff you really can't get at through any other measures because it's looking directly into the brain, it's not asking questions that come through a very rational filter.
Fabulous. So we're really getting deep insight in terms of what affects behaviours with regards to brands. Heather, thank you so much. Good luck this afternoon.